So now that I have created my assignments, we're ready for our last step in our PowerTeacher Pro gradebook, which is actually grading assignments. You can get to assignments to give grades from multiple places. One of the ways you can get to them is to go to A+ Grading, an assignment list, which will show you all of the assignments that you have created for the current quarter in which you are in. The other way you can grade is by going to A+ Grading and Score Sheet. This will show all of the students enrolled in your current course at the top that you have chosen, and you can give students grades for multiple assignments at once. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to go to A+ Grading Assignment List to assign one assignment for all students in my English Language Arts class. I'm going to click on this assignment, and it's going to go open up the scoring area for this one assignment for all students in this course. Once I have opened this assignment, I now see the names of all of my students in this 8th grade English Language Arts class. In order to give a grade to a student, I'm going to click in the cell to the right of their name underneath the score box. Once that opens, you'll notice the grading calculator is now open on the right. This is where I can either type or click on a score to give a student a score. In order to give this student a score, I'm going to refer back to this rubric for English Language Arts and choose the prompt level the student used and the number of subtest scores that were increasing. For this particular student, the prompt level was verbal gestural, so he lives in this category. And his score did not increase from baseline, so he was at 0, so his score should be a 70%. If I go back to my gradebook, I can now in this cell type in a 70, and I can now choose to click Save at the bottom. Once I enter grades for one student, I can go to the next student, use the rubric, process again, and enter grades. Once all student grades have been done, I can select Save. As a reminder, although I do teach students from multiple grades in my low incidence class, I have to go to each section of their classes in order to give a separate grade. So for example, I just gave grades to my 8th grade students. I would need to go to my English Language Arts 7th grade section to give grades to my 7th grade students. Once all of my grades are saved, I can then move on to another section of the same course like English Language Arts, or I can move into another subject area like Social Studies. You will continue this process of adding assignments and then scoring assignments either through A+ Grading Assignment List or A+ Grading Score Sheet for all required assignments based on DEC guidelines for ELA, Math, Science, and Social Studies. Please continue to refer to the low incidence rubric for grading information for both ELA and Math at the top and Science and Social Studies on the second page. Now that you've added assignments and given grades to assignments, oftentimes you may have questions or unique situations about how to provide grades for certain students or for certain assignments. One of the biggest questions we have when it comes to giving grades for low incidence students is how to give grades for students in ELA and Math based on ULS checkpoints that do not have a lot of subtests. In our lowest grades of low incidence students, especially in elementary, many of the ULS subtests do not have more than one subtest and often only have 1 to 2 reading questions or math questions in the entire assignment. In those particular situations, it is always important to first think about the prompt level the student required. So let's say I am a 3rd grade low incidence teacher and I'm trying to give an ELA grade for a student where the ULS pre and post test only had 2 ELA questions on each one. My first step would be to choose the prompt level the student required for this work. So in my example, my third grade student required partial physical assistance. So her grade is already going to be limited to one of these four choices: 90, 80, 70, or 65. At this point in time, the y-axis, which gives you the number of subtests increased, is not going to provide the best information for you to grade based on the low number of questions on this checkpoint. Instead, this is where your work as a professional certified educator should come into play to first remove the options that are least likely to communicate how the student progressed in their learning. So for example, in this example of partial physical, my first thought is going to be, did the student exceed expectations from their pre and post? Did they go above and beyond? If the answer is not absolutely yes, they did great, they were a 0 on the first questions, now they were able to move from full physical to partial physical, they rocked it, they're doing great. If that is not the answer, you can eliminate the top choice from this column. In this example, 90%. Next, you will then go to the opposite extreme, the lowest score possible for this student. Your next question to yourself will be, did the student show no growth at all? Meaning they performed well on one question on the pre-test, and on the post-test they got nothing right. They were independent the first time and now they're partial physical. They're not able to do it. If that is not the option, you can eliminate the lowest score. Of course, if that is the answer of how the student performed, your score would then be that lowest score. At that point, if you have eliminated the highest and lowest number from the range, you are now left with only two scores the student can receive, an 80% or a 70%. At this point, you may look at individual item questions in the pre and post test to see if student scores increased on any of them, and your knowledge of what these scores indicate according to the uniform grading policy to determine if an 80% or 70% is appropriate. Although many of us would love to have our students shoot for the stars and receive 100% on all items, according to the state's uniform grading policy, a 70% or score right at 75% is meeting a standard for that student's needs and for how that student is graded. So in this example between an 80 and 70%, you as a professional using the ULS checkpoint scores would say, did they improve more than they stayed the same? If they improved some, I would give them an 80%. If their score was about the same, I would give them a 70%. The DEC expectation is that you use this rubric. However, if your data or assessment does not align exactly with this rubric, please make sure that you at least have reasoning and student work samples to use to show why you chose this score using this rubric. Another problem that often comes up is when using this rubric is teachers using the prompt level for students with severe disabilities that often need full physical prompts. Many teachers have questioned how to give students a grade when it seems like they are being penalized for requiring assistance more than other students. As always, please note that this column indicates high levels of scores that are possible, including an 85% is the highest. It is not the purpose of this rubric to limit students with a high level of supportive need to a lower score. As always, as a certified professional, you are able to use your discretion to indicate if on some assessments or some post-tests the student was more involved or knew more, and can then increase their prompt level to a partial physical. If for that student's disability, they were able to do things in an independent manner as much as possible for their disability, you can also use the independent or verbal gestural column. But please note these columns were not meant to penalize those students with the highest level of physical need, only as an indicator to show how they approach that particular assessment. Another issue that frequently comes up is for science and social studies, particularly when it comes to knowing which assignments to use for these grades. Any questions regarding which assignments to use should be directed to your special education lead teacher at your school or your Department of Exceptional Children coordinator. Those staff can assist with helping you to know what assignments to use and can also assist with any questions you may have about unique grading situations and how to align those with these rubrics. If you are unsure of who to reach out to at the Department of Exceptional Children or at your school, please reach out to Samantha Bovers in Assessment and Evaluation for assistance with low incidence report card grading and use of rubrics. As always, the purpose of these rubrics is to provide meaningful information to parents and guardians on student progress. So as a reminder, the low incident parent letter, which is required to be sent out at least during quarter 1, also includes copies of these rubrics for parents to use when determining how their student received that grade.